What's good, everyone? I'm VenomousStare, the Chad Henney of StarCraft 2, and I'm bringing you an exceptional Zerg versus Protoss today. This time we have two players who have won major lands in Korea. That's right, two guys who have gone to the Mecca of StarCraft 2 in the world, Seoul, South Korea, and proved that in real life they are top tier guys who are forces to be reckoned with, and these matches were played at BlizzCon after the tournaments that they won. Dark, the infallible Korean macro Zerg, spawns in the bottom right of King Sejong Station. Dark is best known for his win of SSL, a tournament very similar to GSL, which is the best tournament in the world, casted by Tasteless and Artosis. Neeb is going to go for a fast expand build here, it appears, because he doesn't really send any other guys into gas. Notice that Neeb keeps his 16 guys on gas and then just has the subsequent probes he makes rally to his gas geyser. This allows him to boost up to 400 beautiful minerals very quickly, which of course gives him a nexus. Now the reason I point this out, 16 minerals or 16 probes on minerals is the ideal number. It's the number you should be aiming to have at every single base. So the fact that Neeb committed to keeping these 16 on minerals is very important whenever you want to master early game macro. Because the 3 probes very early on in the game is actually a very big deal. If he had just thrown 3 probes in gas right as it finished, like many players would have, this would have been significantly later, and the Cybercore would have also been later. So nice attention to detail from the American player Neeb, who is currently down 2 games to none versus Dark, who both games has ended it relatively early. If you have not seen the VODs, go watch them. I casted the previous 2 games, of course, on this channel. Neeb is going for an Adept here. This is very commonplace for him. He is a kind of player who likes to scout and keep his opponent on the back foot with harassment throughout the game. If you look at his Protoss versus Protoss, it is a matchup where his crisp micro excels, and quite honestly is his best matchup and one of the main reasons that he won Kespa Cup. He's having some trouble with Dark here, down 2-0. Dark is a very tough customer. Dark is the kind of guy who not only is hard to catch off guard with cheese, but is hard to beat in a macro game. One of the absolute toughest Zergs in the world. Neeb is going to scout down, see the third, and possibly Adept Shade into the main. He does. But this is part of why Dark is so good. Dark will very rarely get Sloppy Joe and lose units for no reason to harassment. Neeb is looking around with this Adept, seeing what he can get done. He does get scouting information, but Dark is going to surge ahead into workers very quickly. He has 7 drones on the way. Neeb is once again trying to take control of the game. He gets 1 drone. Okay, 1 drone. That's something. It's not much. Dark is getting his quick Overlord speed as always. It's already done. Just staggeringly fast Overlord speed. And this prevents Dark from being caught off guard in any capacity. He's going to scout Neeb's Dark Shrine. And quite honestly, if you're Neeb, you're down 2-0 in a best of 5. You're in dire straits versus a macro Zerg who you can't catch off guard. None of your little tricks or build orders you're doing is working. And the guy who you're desperately in need of tricking and getting ahead in some sort of cute little way gets fast Overlord speed. On top of it all, on top of the economy and the defense and the threat of Dropper Lords, he's somehow managing to also tech to fast Overlord speed and constantly scout. Now this is one of the most valuable and intelligent things a Zerg can do, is scout constantly. And if you're confident that you're better than your opponent, this is one of the best builds to do. And this is something that we see Dark do all the time, regardless of whether he's playing Americans or not. He opts for this fast Overlord speed, and it's almost his playstyle to say, well, I know I'm better than you, so I'll just get 3 bases, tech to fast Overlords, and constantly scout you, and never get caught off guard. And that really is a great way to win games versus Protoss. One of the easiest ways to lose versus Protoss is to be caught off guard. So Neeb is building Dark Templars here. In Game 1, he also built Dark Templars that were scouted. It will be interesting to me whether he tries to do much DT harass. We can see in this game he hasn't even tried. He's just going to do double Archon drops. But Dark has a ton of defense already here. He has beautiful creep spread in his main, which this main is actually kind of hard to defend if you don't have creep spread. Neeb is going to try to do some nice harass here. Great micro, not losing either Archon. Ooh, very close, as we see this corner of the base was not creeped, and that might have been Neeb's saving grace. But Dark had perfect defense there, and despite the fact that Neeb tech to this Warp Prism, tech to DT, didn't really do the damage he needed. And if we go to income, we see that not only is Dark ahead of base, but that base is very well saturated. Neeb is trying to take a third over here. He has sentries once again. He's teching to Immortal. He can start to get upgrades out of his Twilight. Neeb is in a much better position than he was in games 1 and 2. But Dark is not in a bad position by any means. He has 3 bases with lots of drones. He's making 10 more drones right now, teching to Roach, and most importantly, Dark is constantly seeing the upgrades of Neeb. Notice that Neeb delayed his upgrade to do this little DT Warp Prism pressure, which, of course, because it was scouted, ended up being Archon pressure. Now his Twilight upgrades and his Forge upgrades are delayed, but he's going to see what he can get done by continuously flying around with the Warp Prism. Of course, he can pick up and run away whenever he wants. He's going to run into a Queen and a Spore here. This one Archon is very low. It has 80 shields, but Neeb is going to take advantage of the Legacy of the Void, drop and pick up range on the Warp Prism, and escape fate there. Charge lots are coming forward, coming forth for Dark, excuse me. Dark is a guy who pretty much scouts better than almost any Zerg in the world. Not only that initial scout that is very important to see what Protoss' tech of choice is going to be, but the constant subsequent scouts that ensure you're not getting hoodwinked by any sort of cancel play, or you're not getting caught off guard by some sort of tech switch. Notice Neeb is checking over here for a base. There's not one. He's scouting around with an Adept. Both players are playing macro here and constantly scouting each other, and there is a reasonable amount of mutual respect here going on, as both players have not really done a lot of aggression in the early game. Dark has a 4th base. He already has drones coming out. He's starting to tech into Hydra, which will be good versus Robo units, but not so good versus Speedlots and Archons. As long as Dark has a nice little Roach meat shield, though, it will be difficult for Neeb to do much. Now, Dark is making a Lurker Den, and the fact that he's making pure Ling right now indicates to me that Dark is going to roll with his 8 Roaches. This is a modest 8 Roaches. This is like a Larry the Cable Guy version of Roaches. This is just the kind of Roach force that gets the job done. But Dark has a plethora of Hydras that I suspect, due to the building gas and subsequent 7th and 8th gas geysers, these are going to be Lurkers. And if I had to be any sort of predictor, I would say that Dark is going to make a plethora of Lurkers once the Den finishes. After the Den finishes, he's going to do a hard pressure at the 4th of Neeb, and Neeb is going to be very hard pressed to defend it. He's going to need Disruptors, or Templar, or Colossus. The current composition Neeb has, this kind of Archon Charge Lot Immortal, is very good for hard engaging on the Zerg. But the thing that you have to consider is the very last thing that Protoss wants to do versus a Lurker base force, as we see the 11 Lurkers being morphed for Dark, who is also teching into missile upgrades. The last thing you want to do versus Lurkers is hard engage into them when they have a meat shield, because the meat shield will tank the damage and you'll stand in the obnoxious Lurker DPS. 14 Lurkers on the way for Dark. So Neeb is going to have to start this fight by killing the Lurkers or by doing severe splash to the Lurkers, because if Dark gets in position, this is just going to be a nightmare. Notice how Dark is multitasking over here, distracting Neeb so his Lurkers can get in position, and there they are. And look at this, Neeb can't even engage because of Lings and Banes, and Dark can move the Lurkers up in even a more advantageous position. Roach is streaming forward here for Dark, and it looks as though he's going to do extreme damage to the American Protoss. The American Protoss, simply put, cannot defend his 4th base. He cannot defend this enormous amount of damage. He's going to try as the Oracle gets a spot onto the Lurkers, but there are too many Lurkers here to properly engage into without Disruptor Storm or Colossus. And Neeb macroed well that game, but he just wasn't able to keep up with that Lurker push. Great move by Dark, swinging in to the side with a bunch of Lings, threatening the natural of Neeb, when in reality all he wanted to do was move up and crack the 4th. So Dark takes the series convincingly 3-0 versus the American. Subscribe for more.